Coming up on this Tuesday edition of Daybreak, battling bad weather and powerful currents, divers recover one more body from the sunken Sewol-ho ferry in their on and off search operations for the more than 100 passengers who remain unaccounted for. Amid rising concerns, North Korea could soon conduct a fourth nuclear test. The leaders of South Korea and China are likely to meet for talks in the coming weeks. Plus, the US imposes sanctions on 7 Russian nationals and more than a dozen firms linked to President Putin's inner circle over their role in the Ukraine crisis. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers here in Korea and around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Tuesday, April 29th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Exactly 2 weeks have passed since the ill-fated Sewol-ho ferry packed with hundreds of mostly young passengers left Incheon bound for Jeju Island. The country is still in a deep sense of sorrow, with 189 people now confirmed dead and 113 others unaccounted for but presumed dead. For the latest, let's connect to our Shin Se-min at the news centre. Se-min, it's been raining for almost 2 days straight down there at the accident site. How has this affected the search and rescue operations?
Yes, Mark, 189 is the official death toll as of now. But one local media outlet, YTN, is reporting that 4 more bodies have been recovered overnight, but nothing official yet. But we'll keep you updated. And it was a slow and harsh day for the search and rescue operation team on Monday, as weather and sea conditions were far from favorable. Heavy rain and high tides, fast currents, and fog were troubling factors, slowing the rescue operation. The rain is expected to cease sometime this morning, but the sea conditions will get tougher, with currents forecast to reach the speeds of 2.4 meters per second. And in terms of the search operation, a diving bell is expected to be put in Tuesday morning, and this will allow divers to continue their underwater search for up to 20 consecutive hours. And so far, around 111 cabins have been searched. The divers mainly focus on searching the 4th floor of the ferry, where most of the missing passengers are believed to be, and that is all I have for now in terms of the operation.
And Se-min, the authorities released a new video that shows the first moments of the rescue process. What does this show us?
The video released by the Maritime Police shows crucial moments of how the first minutes of the rescue efforts were carried out, but also showing that the captain and the crew member were among the first to get off the sinking ferry. Now, the video was taken between 9:43 a.m. and 9:49 a.m. by one of the rescue team dispatched for rescue. And this footage clearly shows that Captain Lee Jun-seok and his crew leaving the ferry without attending to passengers. And it's difficult to distinguish him as a captain as he jumps into the rescue boat in his boxer shorts without his uniform on. By 9:35 a.m., all 15 crew members have started to abandon their ship, but as you can see, hardly any passengers are seen on the deck of the ferry, raising criticism that crew didn't properly instruct them to leave the ship. Kim Kyung-il, a Mokpo Coast Guard official, was one of the first to arrive at the site and explained what he saw at a press briefing on Monday.
My team tried to get inside the vessel, into the broadcasting booth, to tell the passengers to get out of the vessel. But we weren't able. The vessel was listing 40 to 50 degrees, and there were people in the freezing water.
And Se-min, what about the criminal investigations that are ongoing at the moment? What do we know so far?
Yes, Mark, there are a number of investigations underway. Investigators have been looking into a practical owner of the ferry company, Yoo Byung-un. Prosecutors raided 4 officials' offices in Seoul, Daegu, and in Gyeonggi-do province on Monday, looking for evidence of paper companies. They also raided the Mokpo Coast Guard station, suspecting officers are neglecting their duties in the early stages of the rescue. Also, 3 members of the Korea Shipping Association Association have been arrested for destroying evidence in relation to the case. Investigations into whether the ferry had malfunctioning lifeboats on board will also broaden, as 5 lifeboats were found floating near the scene, indicating that they began to work much later than they should have. A functioning lifeboat would automatically deploy upon coming under external pressure. And Mark, that's all I have for now, but I will keep you updated throughout the day.
Okay, thank you very much, Semin. Now, all eyes are on whether President Park Geun-hye will say sorry for the government's handling of the Sewol-ho ferry tragedy, with some speculating an apology could come during a cabinet meeting this Tuesday morning. Both ruling and opposition parties have said an apology is due, given the scale of the accident that left more than 300 people dead or missing, and the inefficient and slow rescue operation following the disaster. After approving Prime Minister Jong Hong-won's resignation, pundits say it seems highly likely President Park will issue an apology herself, while assuring the public she will institute far-reaching reforms and reshuffle her cabinet. With a tragedy of this magnitude, experts say that residents across Ansan, the city most touched by this disaster, are suffering from mental strain, not just the families and friends of the victims. To deal with the crisis, officials say a trauma centre will be set up in the city. Psychiatrists, therapists and counsellors will be on standby to provide citizens with mental health care. There are concerns local residents could suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, given the horrific nature of the disaster and the number of people it has affected. Japanese leaders have expressed their condolences to the victims of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida and Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga visited a memorial altar set up at the headquarters of the Korea Residents' Union in Tokyo on Monday to pay their respects to the deceased and the missing. Kishida said Japan will do all it can to help Korea in its time of need. The altar opened to the public last Friday with a memorial service attended by many Korean nationals living in the country. The Korean government and the Coast Guard have come under a barrage of criticism for their poor handling of the ferry disaster. It has people asking how such a crisis might have been handled in other nations and what Korea needs to do to put safety first. Son Jung-in reports.
Most major advanced countries have an integrated disaster response system that is activated in cases of an unforeseen emergency. In Germany, for example, information is shared among the provincial governments and civil experts under the direction of the Federal Office of Civil Protection and Disaster Assistance. Following a massive earthquake in eastern Japan in 2011, Tokyo strengthened its response system, giving the cabinet oversight of the gathering, delivery, and sharing of information. In England, a strategic coordination group composed of army, police, and fire authorities takes charge. When faced with a large-scale emergency situation, the Central Emergency Management Committee has full control and can even put parliamentary sessions on hold upon approval of the Queen. France's Public Safety Administrative Office provides coordinated direction, and an emergency response team of experts from a variety of fields is on standby around the clock. When it comes to the aftermath of a tragic event, the U.S. government responds immediately by deploying psychological therapists to help victims. Such was the case after Hurricane Katrina in August 2005 and after September 11th terrorist attacks. In both cases, the Federal Emergency Management Agency took charge of the nation's disaster response and provided support for the affected. The same guidelines are in place in Japan, where roughly $17 million is put aside for fostering nurses, clinical counselors, and mental health social workers in psychological therapy centers. With distrust growing toward government officials here over the Sewol-ho response, experts in Korea say the government is in desperate need of retooling its emergency management system and beefing up the Coast Guard's disaster responses. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
South Korea is looking to hold a summit with China in the coming weeks amid rising concerns North Korea is on standby to conduct a fourth nuclear test. Government sources in Seoul say there are ongoing talks to get a meeting arranged soon, with some saying Chinese President Xi Jinping could visit Seoul as early as next month. An official announcement on the meeting could come soon. The envisioned talks are part of the two countries' efforts to curb North Korea's nuclear ambitions and prevent further provocations. North Korea human rights activist Susan Schulte has called on South Korean politicians to speak with one voice on improving human rights conditions in North Korea. Na Hyung-young reports.
South Korean politicians who refuse to pass a North Korea Human Rights Act are like the captain of the sunken Sewol-ho ferry, says North Korea human rights activist Susan Schulte.
Those people remind me of the captain of the Sewol ferry because this man turned away from people whose lives were in terrible danger and hid his face. And this is what people are doing that won't address the North Korean human rights issues. They're hiding their faces and ignoring the political prisoner camps, the starvation, the crimes against humanity, the fact that women are being bought and sold and trafficked in China. North Korean women, it's happening today.
Schulte says even if North Korea's human rights violation cases are referred to the International Criminal Court, as suggested by the UN Commission of Inquiry after publishing a report last month, it will have limited effects.
And that's because China and Russia will obviously block progress because they don't believe, as members of the Security Council, that the Security Council has the right to be involved and address human rights issues.
And that's why South Korea's role is crucial. She says an average North Korean no longer believes what they're being told by the regime is true. The people in North Korea have access to the outside world, and the outside world can and should utilize this.
I believe that most people that are in that dictatorship are really questioning whether blindly following Kim Jong-un is the way forward. So my point is, you start to say that not only do we know who are committing these crimes, but we know that it's you that's been involved with this. We start naming the names. We make it costly for them to continue to blindly follow this regime. And we need to be broadcasting that information in because the North Korean people, I believe, are starting to learn the truth and to realize that the source of their misery, the source of their suffering is the Kim regime. Not South Korea, not the United States, not people from the outside world. It's the regime that's causing the terrible suffering.
Na Hyung-young, Arirang News.
Now, with concerns growing about another nuclear test in North Korea, South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se will chair a UN session on nuclear weapons next week. Seoul's Foreign Ministry said Monday that Minister Yoon will be on a 5-day visit to New York City from Saturday to assume South Korea's one-month presidency at the UN Security Council in May. The South Korean diplomat will host an open discussion on the execution of UN Security Council Resolution 1540 next Wednesday. South Korea is the chair country for the 1540 committee, which was established to prevent the spread of weapons of mass destruction to non-state actors. Some new figures are casting a cloud over Korea's moderate economic recovery. The profitability of the nation's companies fell to its lowest point in 10 years in 2013. The Bank of Korea said Monday that the average ratio of operating profit to sales stood at 4.6% last year. That's down 0.2 percentage points from 2012. That is the lowest, in fact, since 2003, when the central bank started to compile related data. The ratio means that for every $10 of sales, the company made profits of 46 cents. Removing the nation's two most profitable companies, Samsung Electronics and Hyundai Motor, and the figure fell even more last year to 3.4%. As the whole country remains in a deep state of sorrow over the Sewol-ho ferry disaster, many Koreans are spending less and refraining from leisure activities. Our Hwang Jie reports on how this may cloud the ongoing economic recovery.
Around 250 events and cultural festivals were canceled across the nation after the Sewolho ferry submerged in waters off the southern coast of Korea last Wednesday. Tourism companies are also facing major cancellations as the Education Ministry banned all school trips in the first half of this year, while the whole nation is grieving with the families of the victims. Retail shops are also taking a hit. Sales at one of the country's main department stores, Lotte, dropped nearly 1% in the week following the ferry accident compared to the same period a year earlier. Sales of women's clothing in particular dropped more than 4% from the previous year, pointing to a social phenomenon that many of those suffering from depression after the disaster are females. In fact, the shock of a large-scale disaster has shown to impact the economy. After the September 11th terror attacks in the United States, retail sales in September dropped nearly 2.5% on month, falling to its lowest level in 9 years. Korea's private spending also dropped 0.8 percentage points in the third quarter of 1995, right after the Sampoong department store collapsed in June of that year. While the consumer sentiment remained unchanged for 3 straight months in April, according to the Bank of Korea, experts are concerned that the recent ferry disaster could flag the moderate pace of economic recovery. 황지혜, 아리랑 뉴스.
Time now for a look through our international headlines. And for that, we connect live to our Eunice Kim, who's standing by at the news center. Good morning, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. New sanctions are queued up for friends of Russian President Vladimir Putin, both from the U.S. and the European Union. The White House said Monday it has expanded asset freezes and visa bans to 7 Russian government officials, including 2 members of President Putin's inner circle, as well as 17 companies linked to that inner circle. U.S. President Barack Obama said they were targeted sanctions in response to Moscow's continued intervention in Ukraine, despite an agreement in Geneva among foreign ministers earlier this month. The European Union has added 15 more Russian officials to its sanctions list, though it has not immediately released their names. Meanwhile, Slovakia has agreed to allow cash-strapped Ukraine to use its pipeline to move gas from Western Europe. This as Kiev seeks to lessen its dependence on Russian supplies. Americans in parts of southern and midwestern USA are bracing for a new round of storms as severe weather and tornadoes swept through Iowa, Oklahoma, and Arkansas on Sunday local time. At least 14 were killed, much of the damage in 2 Faulkner County towns in Arkansas, where eyewitnesses reported flipped cars, broken gas lines, shattered homes, snapped trees, and mountains of debris. Rescue workers and volunteers sift through the rubble as the storm system threatens its second round through parts of Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Tennessee. Schools in Alabama will dismiss early on Monday. And in Leeds, England, a 61-year-old Spanish teacher has been stabbed to death in front of students. The attack took place Monday morning local time at Corpus Christi Catholic College, where a 15-year-old student was arrested in connection to the case. West Yorkshire police said the teacher received multiple stab wounds and was pronounced dead at the hospital. They called it an unprecedented event that will prove to be a very traumatic situation for those involved. And peace talks are to resume in South Sudan Monday between its government and rebels. The talks will take place in the Ethiopian capital of Addis Ababa, and as the United Nations top human rights official, Nabi Pillay, visits the country as part of a 2-day investigation of the situation on the ground. The talks resume amid optimism, though some are reported to be jaded with the peace process due to a lack of progress. The country has been bogged down by ethnic violence and war crimes, including massacres and rape.
And good morning to you all as we kick things off in the LPGA. And just moments after No Seung-yeol was able to claim his first PGA title during the Zurich Classic, 17-year-old Lydia Ko was able to win her first title as a pro at the LPGA Swinging Skirts Classic. The 17-year-old Korean New Zealander who gained her LPGA Tour membership starting the season despite her age stormed through in the third and fourth round of the event as she came back to claim her first pro title after shooting a 12 under par overall. The score was just good enough to beat American Stacey Lewis, who finished second at 11 under par, while world number one Park In-bi still looks for her first title of the season after finishing tied for fourth at 6 under par. And shifting over to the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, where the International Olympic Committee's organizing committee will be in the resort town for 4 days to check up on the current status of the venue. In what is their third meeting so far, the meeting will have some of the presidents of different winter sports federations come together to check out the current status of the venue in Pyeongchang. They plan to take a look at how the constructions are being done and where the Olympic Village will be built. Meanwhile, Tavio Sinquanta, the president of the International Skating Union, who will also be on hand, apparently refused to answer questions regarding the controversial judging during the figure skating event during the 2014 Sochi Winter Games. And shifting over to Kim Yeon-ah, who had previously canceled her retirement commemoration medal event amid the Seoul ferry accident, held the event on Monday. Now, wearing a black dress and a yellow ribbon to show respect to those affected by the tragic accident, the figure queen made a quiet entrance to showcase the limited edition medals that are now on sale to commemorate her retirement from the sport. And while she previously planned to donate the proceeds to the youth figure skating in the nation, she stated that she decided to donate the proceeds to the victims of the Seoul ferry accident. And now finishing things off in the majors, where Ryu Yeon-jin took the mound against the Colorado Rockies on Sunday to get his fourth win of the season and the Dodgers' 10,000th win in team history. Well, none of that actually happened, as the Rockies lineup took advantage of Ryu Yeon-jin's 4-day rest, tagging him for 6 runs on 5 innings of pitching, as the South Korean southpaw got his second loss of the season. And with the loss, the LA Dodgers, who were looking for their team's 10,000th victory, stayed at 9,999 wins. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Well, I'm Lee Ji-hyun here to give you a weather update in Chindo and around the country. Well, it's been raining quite heavy on and off across the nation, and this harsh and tough weather conditions should continue in Chindo. Winds blowing at 6 to 11 meters per second during the day. And it's going to be another rainy day today. Lots of clouds that are hovering over the peninsula have been dropping showers, so please watch out for slippery roads. And this band of rain should start to gradually let off from the Seoul metro area from the late afternoon. And with this continuous rain from last Sunday, temperatures have been staying on the cool side, and it looks like temperatures will remain similar to yesterday, so please dress accordingly. And let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The low in Seoul is starting at 12, and it seems like the afternoon high in the capital, Daegu, Gwangju, and Busan should all top out at 18 this afternoon. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju will reach to 19, Daejeon peaks at 18, and Dokdo will see a high of 13, while Mount Keungang only tops out at 8. Well, don't forget to pack an umbrella with you before heading out, and that's all for Korea. And let's take a closer look at the temperatures for viewers around the world.
Well, those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Korea Today is coming up in about half an hour's time. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.